Hello, everyone. Welcome to First Online University, a global platform for all your education and growth related needs. In this lecture, we are going to start with a new chapter that is aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids. In this particular lecture, it's going to be very brief. The lecture will be very brief, and you will be given an introduction to aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids to be able to understand these functional groups first. And then in the upcoming lectures, we will get into further details of these topics. Before we begin, a piece of information for you. You can use the coupon codes Mission JEE or Mission NEET while you enroll at First Online University for Mission JEE or NEET. Let us get introduced to aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids. Now let us see how we actually see. We will get into details of aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids as to how they are prepared, what are the various reactions that they undergo, where all do we see them in daily life. But before we actually get into the advanced parts of it, we need to understand the basics first. The basic would help us understand how do we represent aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids. One thing that we know is that all these three contain a carbonyl group, that is C double bond O group. But this group is present in three different formats, or you can say three different forms in these three different functional groups. So how do we represent aldehydes? First of all, we have our C double bond OH. So this is where aldehydes and ketones are going to differ from each other. In case of aldehydes, apart from the C double bond O group that is present, there will be one R group that would be H also. But there is going to be one H, that is one hydrogen definitely attached to the carbonyl carbon. However, in case of ketones, we have both the R groups. Now, one of the R group can even be hydrogen, right? But then that will get transformed to aldehyde. So therefore, the major difference is that the carbonyl carbon has one hydrogen in case of aldehydes, and it has no hydrogen in case of a ketone. Therefore, aldehydes are terminal functional groups, whereas ketones or a ketone is a non-terminal functional group. That is, it will always appear in between a chain, whether at the second or third or fourth position, depending upon whatever compound is given to us. But aldehyde is always going to appear at the end of any given chain. And remember that aldehyde has to be given the first number always, okay? Irrespective of any other functional group present, aldehyde gets number 1. If there is a carboxylic group also that is present, then carboxylic acid gets number 1, aldehyde will get number 2, because both of them are terminals. So starting from carboxylic acid, we'll move towards the aldehyde. Now, this was something that I have orally explained to you. Let us now see all these things through examples. So when I say aldehydes are molecules, or we can say compounds, which have a carbonyl group and a hydrogen that is attached to the carbonyl carbon, let us see the examples. So we can have the simplest aldehyde possible, that is formaldehyde, HCOO, H, C double bond O, H. That's called formaldehyde. Then we can have acetaldehyde. Remember, it's not ACI in the spellings of acetaldehyde, it's ACE. It's been wrongly mentioned here. So the second in the chain, the second in the series of aldehydes is acetaldehyde, where we have one CH3 and one hydrogen attached to the carbonyl carbon. Next we have is ketones. Now, as I've already told you, in case of ketones, the carbonyl carbon will have both the R groups present or attached to it. These two R groups can be same or different, depending upon the compound that we are talking about. So, supposedly, if you're talking about propanone, then both the R will be equal to, both the R's will be equal to CH3. Let us have a look at the example. The first one is propanone only. that is known as acetone. We rarely call it as propanol. The common name, that is acetone, is the most commonly used term here. We can also have butanone, or we will not call it as butanone. We can call it as butanone, but in order to explain the position of carbonyl group, we can always write it as ethyl methyl ketone. That is, there is one ethyl group and one methyl group that are attached to the carbonyl carbon. So that will help us to define the structure in a better way. Now, can you see that there is something common which is there in these two structures, and that is the carbonyl group. So this carbonyl, that is CO group, is the main functional group that is present. So when I talk about carbonyl compounds, these are those compounds, basically those organic compounds that contain a C double bond O group in their molecules. So we can say that aldehydes and ketones are carbonyl compounds. The general formula of a carbonyl compound would be CnH2nO. Remember the general formula, that is CnH2nO. Now, when I talk about carboxylic acids, now in case of carboxylic acids, there is a carbonyl group present, but we do not call it very particularly a carbonyl compound, because C double bond O, this carbonyl carbon has one R group. The other is the OH group. It's neither R nor H. It's OH group, right? So here, the carboxylic acid derivatives, the OH part of the COH group is going to be now since we know what is a carboxylic acid, we can move on to the derivatives of carboxylic acids. Now, when we have derivatives, then this OH group is going to be replaced by some other group, say a halogen. So if X is replacing OH, that is a halogen atom, we will have the formation of the corresponding carbonyl halides. Okay, we call it as, say, if we are replacing by Cl, we call it as acyl chloride. Okay, so we can also have esters, that is O, C double bond O, and instead of OH we have OR. So in that case, it is going to be an ester. If we have NH2 in place of OH, that is going to be an amide. So here we can have acid halides. That's not acyl halide, is an example where we have CH3 C double bond OCl, that is acyl halide. But in general, they are called acid halides and then amides. We have already seen, anhydrides are also possible. All these are called the derivatives of carboxylic acids. So when we have a carboxylic acid, that is the carbonyl carbon has one R group and the other is a OH group, then this OH group, if replaced by X, will give me acid halide. If replaced by OC double bond OR, so another OCO group, then it is going to form anhydride, that is acid anhydride. If we have OR dash getting added up, we form an ester. And if we have NH2 getting added up, we form an amide. So these are all the derivatives of carboxylic acids only. Because why do we call them as derivatives? Because they are being derived from carboxylic acids only. So these are called acid derivatives. Now let us look in details of these derivatives. Let us first see acyl derivatives. Now what are acyl derivatives? The ones which contain an acyl group. That is, they contain the same acyl group. That is R, C double bond O, and there is going to be one group that is going to be attached to the carbonyl carbon. So that is when we have an acyl group R, C double bond O in the molecules. They are also known as acyl derivatives. When we look at the structure of carbonyl compound, the carbonyl carbon, if you carefully see, is sp2 hybridized. The carbon is attached to the oxygen through a double bond, and whenever a double bond comes next to carbon, that carbon becomes sp2 hybridized. And the oxygen has two lone pair of electrons. So here we see that the carbonyl group consists of one sigma bond and one pi bond between the carbon and oxygen. So carbon will have will have to form two more sigma bonds in order to satisfy the tetravalency of it. Thus, we can have 3 sigma bonds to the carbon atom and 1 pi bond. And in cases where we have 3 sigma bonds to 1 carbon atom and 1 pi bond, the carbon atom is sp2 hybridized in that case. The bond angle in case of sp2 hybridized carbon, we know is going to be 120 degrees. And since we have one sigma bond here, another here, another here, so 120-degree angles means it is going to be a planar structure of the carbonyl group. The geometry is going to be triangular, planar, therefore, with a bond angle of 120 degrees. Now, let us have a look at few concept check questions based on what we have learned till now. Aldehydes or ketones have which group in common? We have already seen these are carbonyl compounds and therefore they will have carbonyl group in common. So option A is the right answer. Next question is, find a group of compounds which have a carbonyl group like aldehydes and ketones. Alkyl halides, we see it's clear from the name itself. Alkyl means simply CH3, CH2, CH2, CH2 and so on. And last, in the end, we'll have some X. So they do not have CO double bond O group. Alcohols we know have OH group. Acid anhydrides, yes. Acid anhydrides, they are basically having OC double bond O group which is attached to the carbonyl carbon of the C double bond O group only. So yes, they are going to have phenols, again OH. So option C is the right answer here. So it's like while answering what we are doing when we want to find out the right answer, we are actually checking out each of the option and then eliminating it. So once we have seen that option A has this group, so it does not fit in, we eliminate that option. So this is how you proceed into answering such MCQs. Now let's move on to the third question. The third question is hybridization of the carbon atom of carbonyl group. We've already seen, since there is one sigma and one pi bond with the oxygen and there are two other sigma bonds, the hybridization is going to be sp2. So option B is the right answer. This is all about the introduction to aldehydes, ketones and carboxylic acids. Basics should be very clear to you that we have discussed in this lecture. So I won't really say that you're going to get questions directly from this lecture. But if you do not understand this lecture, you'll not be able to understand any of the upcoming lectures. Therefore, this lecture is important from your conceptual understanding point of view. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for joining YouTube live classes for best NEET or JEE coaching. You can also download the First Online University mobile app through Google Play Store or App Store for continuous learning through your smartphones. Keep learning with First Online University, a team of millions of learners and educators worldwide.